Oof baboof. Look, I know, it's an awkward time to be a Harry Potter fan, and it probably will be for forever, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. The Harry Potter series is some of my favorite pieces of fiction that has ever fictioned, and they are heavy inspirations for my own books that I am fictioning with my own words. For this reason, I naturally have a lot of opinions about the Harry Potter films, which have a very special place in my heart, and I want to rank them, and I will do it concisely, 250 words, each film, no more and no less. And that is including all the Fantastic Beasts movies, by the way. Lord save my soul, I'm trying my best, but the Niffler is out of the case again, and I am this close to cracking.
Crab, take care of this upstart.
Okay, I have never been the biggest fan of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. As a movie, the book is pinnacle, S-tier, middle-grade fiction, and an instant classic, but the movie struggles to feasibly adapt it. Columbus clearly knows his way around a director's chair. There's amazing production value, interesting shots, a reasonable amount of light in each scene, don't get used to it, all supplemented by John Williams' iconic score. But the movie is rushed, and it feels more like it's covering these many plot points and misadventures out of obligation rather than for the sake of the larger story. That is my golden rule for evaluating a Harry Potter movie, by the way. Harry Potter books are, by their nature, fairly episodic, but does it feel natural, or does it feel like the screenwriters are struggling to check items off a list? The answer here is very much the latter. I feel like I never got to know the main characters, even though that is the point of the lower stakes nature of the first book. Then again, the children could also be to blame because they do not act well. Look, the kids are having fun, and some of that whimsy manages to even rub off on me, sometimes. Rupert Grint got cut in the face for your sins. Yeah, the kid actually took debris to the face. I finally noticed that on my most recent viewing, and now you have to notice it too. I'm ranking these movies after I talk about them, by the way. Don't worry, I do not think Sorcerer's Stone is the worst film in the series.
How funny is that? Imagine being a racist snake.
Chamber of Secrets is much improved from its predecessor. I mean, anything that Gilderoy Lockhart touches turns to gold. Is that really a surprise? Well, Chamber of Secrets is definitely one of Rowling's weaker manuscripts. I am not one of those people who complain that Harry Potter books are too convoluted, but this one was too convoluted. The big dread of the movie is revealed to be a bigot snake. He crawls around the walls of the school trying to murder kids, and he spends the whole book being really bad at it. But the filmmakers got a much better understanding of what to keep and what to cut, and while they couldn't stop the story from being a little silly, they spared us from the mean-spirited vibe that oddly stuck out in the original book. The presentation is significantly better. There was more room to breathe. While in Sorcerer's Stone I felt like I was in a Hogwarts-themed amusement park, I was fully immersed in Chamber. The movie looks and feels good. The effects are kind of cheesy, but they're not distracting. And when I read the books, I always imagine Hogwarts and the wizarding world as Chamber of Secrets portrays it. Also, the child acting is better. Rupert Grint is kind of overacting. I kind of wanted to hit the snooze on the kid, not gonna lie, but I blame the script and the directing more than the kid. But Daniel Radcliffe starts to show some range. Perhaps rather controversially, I am putting Chamber of Secrets above Sorcerer's Stone, mostly for how it functions as a film rather than for its story.
Chocolate? Chocolate! Chocolate!
Prisoner of Azkaban took too long to grow on me. Too long have I lived a life in which I did not appreciate this movie, but no longer. Azkaban is, indeed, amazing. This is easily the best looking of all the Harry Potter movies. Azkaban is the only one that not only depicted events from the book, but interpreted them. The camera is agile, dancing like a dandelion in the wind, if you will. We often peer at the scene through indirect means, like through a glass or the confines of an invisibility cloak. Combine Quaron's visual decadence with Rowling's best source material and it is no wonder this movie pops. Still, some things get lost in adaptation. There are some awkward sequences like the Knight's bus and that ending shot, they really did my boy dirty. I also think the movie's artistic ambition sometimes conflicted with the need to convey exposition. I admired Invisibility Cloak sequence. We too are stuffed in this sweaty cloak, struggling to see and hear over our limited field of view and Harry's muffled breathing. But while it masterfully conveys helplessness and a feeling of sneaking around, we also struggle to make out the information. Some of my favorite plotlines were cut, too, and the movie loses some of the context. Some of the emotionality is lost with it. Still, Prisoner of Azkaban is its own thing, and that makes it so good. What would your Bogart be? Mine would be a copyright claim. Prisoner of Azkaban easily hikes up to the top of the list. While there is always something I think these movies could be doing better, they have also been improving. That's a good sign, right? Right? What's going on?
How did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? Dumbledore asked calmly.
Harry Potter and the Did You Put Your Name in the Goblet of Fire combines all the things I do not like about the films into one package. And then some. I know it is not an enviable job to adapt 700-page Goblet of Fire into a feature-length film, but this screenplay is suffocating. It does not help that the directing is often overwhelming, especially in exposition scenes. These are the same problems I had with Azkaban, but at least Azkaban looked good. Goblet of Fire is muted, grimy, and distorted. Perhaps that is to fit the darker material, but I think you can look darker and look better than this. Quidditch World Cup. I'm not the only one to bring this up, but they butchered Ron bad. I know all of the movies did him wrong, but this is the worst offender. And why is this movie so horny? This movie gets randomly and uncomfortably thirsty. Bro, this is a Harry Potter movie. Thank you for making us watch Hagrid get Me Too'd. Everybody wanted that. I do want to say something good about every movie, so the set pieces are legitimately impressive when we have time to see them. Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort can be goofy, but I do like his performance. Voldemort is a villain that can easily come across as drab, so I actually appreciate the mildly awkward take Fiennes went for. David Tennant is not good, but he's having fun. Somebody should have fun today. Goblet of Fire goes on the bottom of the list. I'm not sure if Order of the Phoenix is the best film in the series, but it is the most competent. At the very least, it is the only Harry Potter film that is significantly and, I think, objectively better than the original book. The novel had a lot of strong points, but it could be a grating read. Following a constantly irritable and miserable Harry Potfield for too many pages was not fun, but the film knew exactly what to cut, and it depicted everything it needed to perfectly. They got a new screenwriter to adapt this film, and this film only. I won't pretend adapting a titanous Harry Potter novel into a feature-length experience is an enviable position, but this shows it can be done. I wish they could have brought Michael Goldenberg back, because this man is an alchemist. Order of the Phoenix is not the flashiest movie in the series by any means, but it is the one that feels most like a well-structured, cohesive story. Mike Newell is definitely no auteur, but he knows how to convey a lot of information very quickly, how to make effects look good, and how to not get in the way of the narrative. He will direct every movie in this series from now on, and that's good. Oh yeah, Dolores Umbridge! Ah, what a nightmare of a guidance counselor. What a bureaucratic sleep paralysis demon. She remains the series' best villain, and the movie captured her perfectly. This was a close call for me, but I decided to put Order of the Phoenix right below Azkaban. There was a sense of artistry and ambition behind Azkaban that wasn't quite there with Phoenix, but ask me tomorrow, I might have changed my mind. Ordered Phoenix is so underrated. Half-Blood Prince gets a bad rep as a film, but I think it has high points not often mentioned. Sure, the movie looks too dim, especially during the fight scenes, which are impossible to follow. Considering Half-Blood Prince mostly leans into lighter stakes teen drama, it is an odd choice to make it look so dark and gritty. If you can get past that, however, this is stellar cinematography. Del Bonel is one of the best cinematographers in the industry. Half-Blood Prince is not his best work, but we get many stellar shots and transitions. Even the dim is mostly used stylishly. This is also the funniest of the movies. Harry is finally snarky, like he is in the books. Hashtag let Harry be snarky again. All of the actors are on point, both comedically and dramatically for most of the movie. Okay, alright. Harry and Ginny. Henny, Gary. I like Half-Blood Prince, but people are absolutely right about this movie romance train wreck.
Open up, you. Don't you trust me?
Not uranium. I wouldn't put uranium in a tube. That would cause a lawsuit. I wouldn't want that. It wouldn't benefit me to put uranium in the tube, dude.
If you can call it that, their scenes feel less romantic and more like some weird Martian interrogation. I do understand why people don't like this movie, for other reasons too. While I liked seeing the cast flex their fun sides, we lost out on crucial build-up from the books, which not only made this movie sometimes feel like filler, but makes the tragic ending feel kind of abrupt. Yet, I don't think this movie has enough defenders, and I would much rather be one of its few defenders than its many detractors. I'm putting Half-Blood Prince over Chamber of Secrets. I can't help but think I am making some sort of grave mistake, but I will insist on stepping firmly onto the rake of public opinion because I want the views.
You. Complete. Ronald Weasley!
I do not know whose idea it was to split the last installment into 2 films, but whoever you are, I love you. Deathly Hallows finally takes our main cast out of Hogwarts and pushes them to their absolute limits. For that reason, the original book was always my favorite in the series, and the movies do it justice. We feel how the characters feel, traveling midst the shadows of a wizarding world sucked of its whimsy and security. Some stories need that extra breathing room.
Obligatory Dune reference.
And Part 1 uses it perfectly. We would not feel that extra immersion at Goblet of Fire pace. The animated Hallows backstory is one of my favorite scenes in probably any film. I am a sucker for stories within stories, especially morbid fairy tales, and the way they impeccably transition from animation to live action is impressive and hypnotizing. Though the movies, both 1 and 2, suffer from the same problems as the book, the plot starts to get really convoluted at this point. The wizarding world itself is not actually that interesting outside of Hogwarts, though I maintain it is enough to sustain 1.5 movies, and I have always cared more about the Horcruxes than the Hallows. Awesome possum animated sequence aside, and I always wished the story just picked a lane, but overcomplication is par for the course of Harry Potter, and we instead avoid a lot of common movie pitfalls. Part 1 does what it needs to do well. Deathly Hallows Part 1 goes under Order of the Phoenix, but well above Half-Blood Prince. We are almost done with the Harry Potter films, and the finale is looking good so far.
You must die!
Say what you want about the series and its many, many flaws. Deathly Hallows Part 2 is the reason I love fantasy, and fiction, and myself. I don't have a deep reason for loving this movie. It is not like Azkaban, where it does anything new or particularly artistically. This movie consists of a simple recipe, high stakes, and wizard fights. Don't get me wrong, the movie does do a lot to support the final battle. All of these kids grew to become great performers. Some of these shots are really cool. The filmmakers masterfully transformed a Hogwarts we might be a little too familiar with by this point into one very unfamiliar battleground. The score bangs. While the book was tethered primarily to Harry, the movie really benefits from being able to show multiple perspectives. While some of the effects in the Pensieve are quite much, the delivery behind Alan Rickman's always gives me the chills. Always. Everything is just right. Even the Voldemort hug? This is how I hug people in real life. Don't you feel comfort? But my love for this installment has less to do with the film and more to do with the accumulation of 7 books, 8 movies, and years in world of watching these characters grow. What is, on paper, a basic final battle becomes my Ragnarok. Objectively, this is not the best or deepest kind of story, but it is the kind of story I have always wanted to make, so I have to put it on the top of my list. Maybe my personal feelings are in the way, but I do think the last film in the franchise remains its best, because everything works together perfectly. And so I have ranked all of the Harry Potter movies. We still have to get through the Fantastic Beasts series, of course, but I am going to miss Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Not enough to read Cursed Child, but still, it's got me feeling nostalgic. Ahoy there! This video is sponsored by me! If you can leave me a like, a subscribe if you haven't already, and especially a comment. It goes a long way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I will just scream into the void. You can't stop me, but perhaps we can scream into the void together. Here's this video's special question. Which Hogwarts house are you in, and why?
I can touch you.
Just like animals, like animals.
I was not expecting to like the first Fantastic Beasts as much as I did, though it has flaws. JK is not as strong of a screenwriter as she was a novelist. The movie is rushed and some things do not make sense. Our characters range from charming to confusing to bland, but still there is a notable improvement in the flow of the story when compared to most adapted Harry Potter films. Fantastic Beasts fixes my main problem with previous movies. It is cool seeing the wizarding world outside Hogwarts. Despite its large stakes, the Harry Potter series felt small in scope. It is refreshing to explore 1920s New York. My big problem is the movie fell apart toward the third act. I felt JK was more interested in setting things up rather than resolving the present story, which is a shame because the stuff being set up was not very interesting. Our main cast is mostly charming. I like Kowalski, and the movie was at its best when they sought out our titular Fantastic Beasts throughout the city. These beasts are fantastic. Comparatively, I felt less for the Credence plot, and I did not give a flying phlegm about Grindelwald. Hey, what's the next movie called? Oh no! I like the good things about the movie more than I dislike the bad things. It had potential to be a promising foundation for a goodish great series, even if it bit off more than it could chew. For that reason, I am putting it a tick above Chamber of Secrets. Crimes of Grindel. Crimes. Just crimes. Took the first movie, thought about how to move forward, and chose all the wrong routes. Like a sadistic GPS that purposely navigates you into traffic. Because of my dumb gimmick, I can only mention some of these problems. Wait for me, I'm coming. Johnny Depp plays our titular crimes committer and phones it in to a ridiculous extent. But still, the biggest problem lies with our heroes. Now the mentor sucked of all things interesting. Newt's whole thing is not wanting to be involved in the plot, but we need him involved in the plot, so he's in love Everybody is in love with each other all the time! Newt goes to France because he is, apparently, in love with somebody who is involved in the plot. A storyline clumsily and barely set up. It was as though we missed an entire movie meant to come before this one. Lita Lestrange loves him too. So does his assistant, because two women bursting over Doctor Who little wasn't enough. And then there is Queenie, who wants to marry a muggle so badly that she joins Grindelwald, whose entire thing is wanting to kill all muggles.
I can foresee no repercussions to this!
At least they're barely in the movie. Everybody is barely in the movie because there is a slew of too many new characters sharing the runtime. Somehow, Credence has returned. The actor who plays young Dumbledore is good, but barely has anything to do. Now that I said something semi-positive, this movie is a 2.5-hour fart. It goes on the bottom of the list, easily. Harry, put this one into the Goblet of Fire, and please crank up the heat. Burn it down, baby! Let Grindelwald become Grizzlewald.
No more petitions or fancy ballot initiatives, just a mano, no holds barred, slippery slalom down an ice-covered peak. Winner gets to be governor.
You can say what you want about Secrets of Dumbledore. You can say a lot. The magic is nonsensical, its cast is still too bloated. The series has no idea what to do with itself, but I maintain Secrets of Dumbledore is significantly better than Crimes. Alright, no duh. Still, I liked it. While the screenplay is not much better than its predecessor, the film is remarkably better shot and acted, which means a lot. I loved seeing these new settings, including Wizarding Germany and Bhutan, which seemed to be much more thought out and distinct than France, which was gray and on fire. I could not follow any of the fights, but they looked cool. Mads Mikkelsen, now playing Grindelwald, acts circles around Depp and by sheer presence makes this villain so much more engaging. I care about Kowalski again. I care a lot. Kowalski for president, I mean Mugwump, and the others were there too. Except for Tina. All in all, I would call Secrets of Dumbledore a guilty pleasure. This is not the Wizarding World cinematic whatever at nearly its best, but despite their next blunder, or whatever JK does next,
Breaking news. I want to sleep forever.
I cannot help but like this series, even when its films or stories are not very good. Harry Potter is kind of like Star Wars for me. It constantly lets me down, and it could always be just a little better, but the series does not have to do a lot to give me enjoyment. I ranked Secrets of Dumbledore below Sorcerer's Stone and above Goblet of Fire. Ugh. In case you zoned out for the past 30 minutes, I don't blame you, this is my overall ranking. At the very bottom goes Crimes of Grindelwald. This is easily one of the most baffling franchise films I have ever seen. Okay, maybe that's not fair, it's pretty fair, but there are so many unusual decisions made in the story that I just cannot fathom. This whole baby swap thing is one of the most convoluted plot points I've ever seen, and when I saw it for the first time, I felt like I was having an aneurysm. Goblet of Fire is better than Crimes. It is by all means a competent film experience, though not a good one. And I felt they made pretty much every wrong decision when it came to adapting the original book. Once we get to Secrets of Dumbledore, I actually start to enjoy these movies. This is not a good movie by any means, it shares a lot of flaws with Crimes, but it does enough things right, particularly in the areas where JK was not involved, to make it a personal guilty pleasure. I never thought Sorcerer's Stone was that good as a movie, but it is charming. I felt like if I grew up with this one, I would like it a lot more. I always thought Chamber of Secrets was a much better film experience than Sorcerer's Stone, but the original source material is nearly impossible to work with. This is the Harry Potter series at its most dumb. But again, a better film, so this was a slightly improved viewing experience for me. Fantastic Beasts is a flawed but charming first entry in what should have been a delightful story. Unfortunately, it took the cyanide pill that was the Grindel, and it all goes downhill from here. Half-Blood Prince has some of the worst scenes in the series, I cannot deny this, but overall I find it very underrated. Even though the movie never sorted out its tone, it did what almost every other movie in the series could not. Let our characters breathe and be, well, who they are, without too much plot getting in the way. Besides, the movie looks quite good in my opinion. Deathly Hallows Part 1 is when we get to the movies I just really like, plain and simple. Order of the Phoenix is everything I want in a Harry Potter film, and it miraculously avoids pretty much all the things I don't want. Yay! But it cannot quite compete with Prisoner of Azkaban, which is easily the most artistic of all these movies. It looks and feels so amazing. If you were to see just one film in the series, you could not go wrong choosing Prisoner of Azkaban. Still, Deathly Hallows Part 2 goes at the top of the list because that's the one I like the most. Yeah. Yup. If you like Daniel Radcliffe, check out Swiss Army Man, a movie where he plays a farting corpse. Okay, I actually haven't seen that one yet, but it's by the same guys who made Everything Everywhere All at Once, so I'm pretty confident that this is worth plugging anyway. Again, Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, plays a farting corpse, and this seems to adequately describe where J.K. Rowling is right now. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like the way I talk about things, but don't want to hear my voice throughout the whole video, I would recommend my ranking of last year's Best Picture nominees that I did with my reviewer friend, Natish. That remains my most ambitious project to date, and I would love to see it get more attention. If you like the 250 word format, I do these for individual movies too, like for Everything Everywhere All at Once, the movie I sort of mentioned earlier. It's a great way to get bite-sized movie recommendations, or dis-recommendations if you're into that, freaks.